Hello, leader. Welcome back to the Fierce Factor podcast. It's your host, Kaylee here, and you are joining me for episode number 212. And I am so excited to bring this topic to the podcast because of the role of private equity in our industry. It has been a very relevant conversation inside of our academy and certainly in aesthetics in general. Aesthetics is currently a $16 billion industry and elegantly merging with a $1.4 trillion wellness industry with no signs of slowing down. So private equity has been very interested in investing in this space to modernize the business operations of practices and certainly to claim a piece of the consumer demand that is driving the growth of our space. And I've heard everything from elation to horror when it comes to private equity partnerships. And so I think it's important to really understand what the mutual goals are when it comes to any kind of business deal, particularly an exit to PE or a strategic buyer. I aim to be an unbiased resource for those of you who are looking to better understand what opportunities might exist for you with private equity, meaning I have zero skin in the game. And that's something you need to be aware of when you're seeking information. And we'll talk more about that at ALT this month. This is why I asked Dr. Janell Ocampo to join me for a conversation about her personal recent experience selling her multi-location practice to a private equity investor. And in this interview, I asked her questions about the state of her business before and after her exit, how she chose a partner, what she would have done differently if, she knew then what she knows now. And we talked a lot about practical ways any business owner can begin to prepare their business to exit at its highest potential valuation when the time is right. Janell breaks down the 101 on what EBITDA is and why it matters. And she talks about the nuts and bolts of what a buyer is looking for in a healthy business worth acquiring for a high multiple. And don't worry, she educates us on what a multiple means too. You are going to love this interview because Janell is not just a wealth of personal knowledge, but she is truly an inspirational human. She shares some raw adversity she faced building her business and supporting her family, and she offers some inspiring advice to tackle your wildest dreams by putting one foot in front of the other and not giving up. And I apologize for my voice. I completely lost it the past few days. So it has been a gift from God that I could even pull off this interview that has been scheduled for months. So bear with me. Also, I still can't find the cord to my microphone. So excuse the poor sound quality. I promise I'll get that fixed soon. Okay, leader, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Janell Ocampo, what you need to know before selling to private equity.
Hi there, welcome to the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Lindholm. And I think it's time for us women to shift the conversation in business and step into our feminine leadership to do the most iconic work the aesthetic industry has ever seen. Each week, I'll be bringing a powerful dose of strategy, sarcasm, solutions, and sass that will rev up your creativity and ignite your brilliance as you link arms with me along our shared path of personal and professional growth in 20 minutes or less. Let's go.
Hello, Fierce Factor listeners. Welcome back. And please apologize for my broken voice today, but I've been resting my voice, which doesn't sound like it, but it was gone the past 2 days. I've been resting it for this amazing interview with Janell Ocampo, which I have been so excited to talk with her about some of her experience, which some of us are so interested in, related to the sort of wave and the era of private equity coming into the aesthetic industry. And Janell actually had the experience of selling her business to a private equity buyer. And she's going to talk to us today about what that experience is like and a little bit about, what she wished she would have known and why she's happy she did. So welcome to the podcast, Janell. So excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Kaylee. It's such a privilege. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to talk about this. So I will say, just add this caveat that there are some restrictions that Janell has around just what she can and can't say related to her privileges and privacy with the buyer. But there's a lot that she's being really generous to open up with us in, the effort to help any of you who are listening better understand what this whole private equity thing is. Because I think all of a sudden this became a term that many people didn't even know existed. Like, what the heck is that, right? Like, I'm a medical provider. I'm just trying to do my best to build a business. And now all of a sudden people are calling me and emailing me about wanting to buy my business. What the heck is going on? So we're really so grateful, Janell, for these insights. So let's start by you telling the listeners a little bit about your background and the launch of Belvie, your practice.
Well, first of all, I'm a board certified family nurse practitioner with a doctorate in nursing, but I wasn't always one. Years ago, I was an ultrasound technologist working in a hospital and loving my job, working in the dark and really not knowing if I'd be happy doing that forever. So I decided to take up nursing, and then all of a sudden there was all this buzz about Botox, and I decided to go and try it. And I fell in love, and I thought, this is expensive. I think I need to get a job in this for the discount. And I did. And I stayed because I fell in love with the positive impact it made on others. And I just loved it. And I opened my first business in 2005, and I had a physician partner, and that partnership didn't work out because of my inexperience and not really understanding, doing your homework and making sure you pick the right partner if you do decide to partner, right? But it was a great learning experience in business. So I continued in the industry, and in 2012, I finally became brave enough to open Belvie Wellness and Medical Aesthetics. And here we are, like over a decade later, and an amazing life because of the business that I opened. And it brought a world of opportunities. Here I am.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, because, now we're on this side where you had this amazing business and now you've exited your business, but there's certainly a big gap in that journey, right? From starting the business to now where you are today. So talk to me about what the evolution of growth was like for Belvie and your relationship with the business through that journey.
Well, soon after opening my business, I had some health changes. Mm-hmm. I ended up getting diagnosed with MS, and it brought so much uncertainty. I didn't know if my hands would be able to continue injecting patients, and it was a scary thought. And I knew I had young girls to raise, and I wanted to make sure I had a good life for them. So my goal in life became that I was going to build a business that I could not be in, and it would continue to thrive as a business. And so I continued along the way with that goal in mind. Is I needed to make sure that whether I was in it or not, it was going to be a successful business and would continue to bring in revenue. And I found that my journey with MS has been very mild, and I've been able to continue to work, even though I have had some health changes, and I definitely need balance in my life. I also realized that my opening of the business in the first place, my intention was to do right by patients and just do what I love, but I didn't look at it as a business. And I truly didn't completely put together the idea that this would be a scalable, sellable business by me pulling myself out. I was just making sure I had regular revenue coming in, was going to be successful, and support our lives, and also do right by patients, of course.
Yeah. So, I can't imagine how scary that was and what that goes through your mind. And you started in 2005. You've been through an economic downturn now, right? COVID, all of the things and in between. And then this, not knowing, what does this mean for me and my relationship and this work that I do. So what was that process like for you? How do you pull yourself out of your business?
Well, I felt like I had to, right? Because I didn't know what was going to happen from one day to the next. And with my initial diagnosis, I was in and out of an IV infusion center, getting steroids hiding my arm where the IV was left in and going back and seeing patients. And it felt ridiculous. And I didn't know how many times I was going to have to do this, by the way, just once, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so I really felt like I had to pull myself back enough. And so I immediately started hiring other providers, and I taught them everything I could teach them and gave them as many outside trainings as I could possibly get my hands on for them as well, so they could be amazing providers for patients and hopefully be even better than me. And so instead of building Janell, I built my brand, and I worked really hard on building a business, not necessarily putting my face out there all the time, but I put the brand out there to grow the business so I would have a sustainable business for the future.
Which almost seems counterintuitive to what we see today, huh? In a lot of aesthetic practices.
Yeah. And a lot of people do really well, selling their name and putting themselves out there. But I think it can be a lot harder on, behind the scenes and bringing in the revenue if they aren't the ones in the business, right? Because everybody wants to see that expert. And I think things can still turn for some of those people. They, are showing that they are teaching the rest of their team everything that they know and really put the brand out there. There's so much opportunities for growth. I mean, the world is just limitless. We could do anything we want. We really can. And all we have to do is put it out there. And so, those people, they have a great following, and all they have to do is teach their following that these other people that they've built up are just as good as them. And they really have to force themselves to pull back, because if they keep accepting all these appointments, people will not change.
Oh, well, I mean, this is a daily conversation that I have with women.
Yeah.
Look, I've been there, right? Like I'm also a service provider in a different way, but we also love the work we do. So it's in a complete mindset shift. I think to your point, from just doing the work that you do to building a business and focusing on becoming the builder of that business and the custodian of that business, right? Building that whole ecosystem. So flash forward, because I love the story of how this all happened. I think this is just sort of where I want to spend the bulk of our time today.
Yeah.
Is, at what point you really decided that you were ready to exit the business?
So I feel like for me, this happened backwards. And for a lot of people, it probably does. And I'm so thankful that things turned out the way they did, because I had such a great buyer, but it isn't something that's necessarily going to happen to everyone without doing their homework. So I feel very lucky, but I think it's so extremely important that people become more aware of the opportunities out there so they can make an educated decision on what's best for them and their business, And so I'm thankful, but I learned a lot along the way. What happened is I never thought I'd sell the business. Through all the aches and pains and my growth as a leader, as a business owner, I never thought I could get a multiple that would allow me to exit. I truly did not understand that side of business. And I have been approached before with, people saying, let's talk. I'm interested in your business. And I would shut it down, almost fearful to talk to people or to release too much information, which, by the way, I was once approached and I had such a bad feeling. I started a conversation with this company and I had such a bad feeling about them that I said, I'm not interested. Although I was curious about this conversation, I felt so yucky when I was on the phone with this person. I remember exactly where I was. I was sitting on my bed. Like, how did they get my phone number? They're in my space, asking me all these questions. And all of a sudden, I'm talking to the stranger. And 2 weeks later, they got all the emails of my entire team and gave job offers, amazing job offers. And this is, a more established company with layers of leadership, backed by private equity, giving offers that my team members couldn't refuse, right? And here I am, a growing entrepreneur, just learning. I don't have all the benefits. I wasn't paying as high. And it made sense why I lost multiple team members. I was at a certain level in my career and they had amazing opportunities and it was their time to flourish. So that was really tough. So fast forward, I get this offer and I just decided that I would have this conversation with her. And I didn't expect much from it, but I was presented with an amazing opportunity. And this was an amazing, smart Ivy League MBA graduate. It's a type of private equity called a search fund model, where they do put together a group of investors to build a business. And it's a highly successful model. And her goals and her ideals were in alignment with Belvi's. And she came in with an offer of adding an extra layer to this team to provide them more support. They had stronger leadership with a lot more hands-on support and more clinical support than they've ever had before. So it's just been a great opportunity for Belvi, and it's been an amazing opportunity for me personally. So I didn't decide until well into this conversation that I'd be selling. I didn't know what I was doing, and it was really stressful along the way because I was new to everything.
Yeah. So gosh, so much in that. So first
it was a lot. It was a lot, but I always a lot.
Well, I'm still sitting on your bed with you with this yucky conversation. Yeah. So let's just tap back into that because I'm thinking, there's a lot of fear that, how do I say? I think that there are some PE funds that are coming in and aggressively approaching entrepreneurs in our space, particularly female entrepreneurs, and basically almost creating this whole FOMO experience of if you don't sell to me right now, and I kind of feel like that's what you were dealing with. It was you're talking to these people, they're trying to get all this info from you, telling you what they need to tell you to give in to them. Mm-hmm. And the next thing you know, they're recruiting all of your team.
Yeah.
So one, do you feel like you then, and then the next part of that conversation is then I sold to somebody. So did that take you out? Was that I'm lost my team and I'm down now and I need to sell? Or was there some space in between there?
No, I felt devastated. It took me so long to get past this because these team members were my family. And I really understood that side of it, but it was just this huge knife in my back. And I spent my entire career kind of staying low key because I started in a time where it wasn't as socially acceptable to be a nurse or nurse practitioner leader. It was a physician-led thing back in the days, right? And so it was easier for me to stay low key and really build the brand anyways, which was part of my long-term goal. So I was just really bummed that I ended up with that target in my back. But in all honesty, it was a learning experience. I didn't grow enough as an entrepreneur. And I realized because I built a brand, the business was okay with or without them in it. They can go out and have this amazing opportunity for themselves. And I could bring in other team members that wanted to continue to grow with us. And I grew as an entrepreneur and leader, right? So it all works itself out. And it's a step backwards. It's a step backwards, but you continue to move forward. And this is a part of business in all industries. It happens a lot in our industry, especially as you get bigger, you're going to get a target on your back. But what do? I've heard other people go through similar things and they say, I'm not going to hire anyone else. I'm going to continue injecting myself. I'm like, good luck. You can only spread yourself so thin.
Absolutely. Well, then, and we'll talk more about this too, but then the whole conversation of your exit strategy, there isn't much of one because if you are the business, what are you going to do? Right.
And the valuation. Private equity is coming in and they are purchasing some some practices that have owner-led businesses, but those owners have to stay in the practice for years, and the valuation is lower for that type of business, and they have to wait for that a big second bite, right? So when there's a bigger roll up, that equity roll will be that second bite for them. And, in most business, there's equity roll, but with that type of practice, it's going to be a big chunk because they have to stay in the business and prove that the business can continue to grow.
Let's sort of like explain to listeners who might not know what that roll up and that second bite means. Do you mind just sort of taking us through that, the very basic sort of understanding about what the goal of private equity is and what those roll ups are about?
Yeah. So in general, private equity will purchase businesses, and a lot of them, and not all of them. I'm not talking in my personal experience because the search fund model is much different than the traditional private equity. But in private equity in general, they will buy multiple locations, package them together, and resell them for a higher multiple. And that's part of why, like, one location is okay, but if you have more locations, ideally 4 or more, but more than one will have a higher valuation than just one, because you are showing that your business is scalable. And same thing within your practice. If you have made your team your main revenue generators and not yourself, you're showing that your business is scalable. But if you take yourself out and it's not successful, you don't have a business. You're just self-employed.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure I kind of clarify to somebody that's like, oh yeah, I was going to open that other location, in the other town or whatever. And they're driving back and forth every other day to each one. That's not what you're talking about here.
Yeah. So exactly. Right. And when private equity goes in and purchases your business, whether you're a single business or you have multiple locations that are run by your team and not just yourself injecting in all those locations, yes. Then there's often an equity roll. And now there are other options too. There could be an earnout or maybe there's none of those, but these are really common. And the reason is because private equity wants you invested in the business. They want you to be a part of the success, right? That they're not going to be sabotaged after they invest so much money into this business, expecting it to grow. And then here it's not doing well, right? And so they want that involvement from the seller to some extent to make sure that it's going to be successful. And that's why there is this equity roll option that's so common in these purchases. And there could be an earnout that, could be involved, and sometimes both, right? It just all depends on what's being offered at that time or what's being negotiated. An earnout would be depending on how much growth in subsequent years, you get a certain type of payment, and that's part of the purchase versus all the money up front.
Right.
And the equity roll as well. If you have equity in the business, typically you're getting a little bit of money in the terms of like annual dividends, or that's being rolled up into your equity. And then when the business is resold at a higher profit, then whatever percentage that is, you also make that additional percentage of money. And that's the second bite.
Right. Perfect. Yeah. So the goal is this PE firm would then bring all these businesses together and then resell as a bigger business to a bigger PE firm, basically. And then that's where you would get that second sort of payout based on how well that sale goes and that there's incentive. So essentially you become an employee who is motivated to ensure the success throughout that process. So, and I'm sure, there's so many different ways all of this can go. So it's so hard to really even make this a basic conversation because we're not investment bankers. So
it's a whole other language. It took me so much time to really absorb that information.
Totally. And I personally too, this isn't something I just knew a ton about either. I've been, researching, and I feel like, it's important as a growth advisor, like to know, obviously what both a balanced side to both, like, is this right or wrong? There's a right or wrong, but what's the right fit,
Yes.
And so I appreciated talking with you because, there's the two sides of the coin. There's, I've had a great experience, and, there's some things that I would have done differently because obviously hindsight's 2020. But let's start by talking about the partner that you did choose and how you knew that that was the right fit for you.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that she is an MBA, Ivy League graduate, so smart. Her goals were in alignment and ideals with the goals and the mission of Belvie. And she really believed in what we stood for, our natural aesthetic, doing right by patients, putting employees first, and women empowerment. And she loved it. She loved every aspect of it. And her goal is to help Belvie become a better place and make it and expand it and make it bigger and better and really build on its strengths. And that felt really good to me. And here another great example, and she's just amazing. And of course, she has formal education on building this type of business, right? And I did my research. This type of model is highly successful. She put together a team of 10 all-women entrepreneurs as her advisory board that she meets with quarterly to help make business decisions. Like, Belvie is going to be and stay in a great place because of her, and I don't have to worry about that side of business. And here she's allowed me to continue to be involved clinically. So I'm a clinical support for the team. I go in and provide advanced off-label education. I'm a call away from them. I'm doing all my favorite stuff. And I'm not obligated to stay on, and she's not obligated to keep me on. We're doing this because it feels great. And the team has more clinical support than they've ever had and more leadership support than they've ever had before.
Yeah, I think, because it's easy to say, well, of course, if the number's right, I'll sell my business. But we're founders and we built, they're our babies.
Our heart is there.
Totally. It's like sending your kid off to college or something. No, yeah. So it's important. And I think it's, what I'm hearing from you is like, you should trust your gut. Like it should feel right, regardless of, like, the numbers are important. But like, if those things that are important to you, like the, pursuance of the value system and, like, maintaining the integrity of what you've built is important to you, you need to know that, right? So that's really exciting. I've, of course, heard everything from success to horror stories. So I love that for you. And
I've heard some of that too.
Yeah.
But you really have to do your homework on who the buyer is, right? Yep. And also keep in mind, some of these horror stories have fallen through because there are companies out there that just give out LOIs like candy, and then they decide if that company is right for them or not, right? But if you're smart, you are putting money into the whole sale process from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so that means for these PE buyers, if they back out, as a business owner, you've lost a significant amount of money because you're being advised from the beginning by good advisors, and that's expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are a number of unhappy people out there because of private equity, but on the other side, because of private equity, we have a sellable business.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one option for sure. So let's talk about now, like, now you've been through this crazy process. You speak an entirely different language.
Yeah.
That you didn't speak before. So educate us on what are some of the things that you would have done differently had you had the experience in your tool belt of having been through this before. How would you go into that again, knowing then what you know now?
There's so much that I really need to write a book on it.
We should do that.
and I won't keep you all day with this, but I'll share like the top 3 things that looking back, I would have done differently. And one is I would have started with an exit in mind. I mean, start the business with an exit in mind. Mm-hmm. I went in as like a self-employed person, just enjoying doing right by my patients, but I really didn't treat it like a business for a long time. My education is nursing, right? And I didn't study leadership until I went through my doctoral program, and that was just several years ago. So it took me a long time of trial and error and practice and workshops, formal education to really become a great leader. So starting with an exit in mind, I think can really help catapult a business into success. It doesn't have to be such a slow grow, but you need to treat it like a business, right? And so we would have grown quicker if I would have done that from the very beginning. And so I would have done that a little bit differently. The next thing is I would have prepped my business the year before my exit. I would have done a reverse quality of earnings and really understood what my adjusted EBITDA is. And I know I'm saying all these words that people are like, oh my God, what did she say? Google it. Basically, get accountants involved and really understand what your business is earning. And I don't mean just what you see in terms of what's on your K1 or your paycheck or however you have that arranged, but what you're truly earning in terms of the adjusted EBITDA, pulling out extra unusual expenses and so forth, understanding the valuation of your business. I would have had a good CPA. I would have moved out of California and saved millions in taxes. And I'm not even kidding. I would have been in like Nevada, Florida, all those no state taxes states. I would have found my team players first instead of later on in the game so I could be advised appropriately. So prepping my business the year before would have put me in a better position. And like I said, I know I had an amazing experience. It wouldn't change a whole lot, but it would have been way less stressful. And I would have had a lot more money in my pocket because there was a lot more trial and error and a lot more taxes that were paid. And then the last thing I would have done is I would have sought exit advice earlier in the process. I really did not know how serious this buyer was. So I worked directly with her without really understanding the real valuation of my business, how fair her offer was. I mean, man, it felt good, but I really, truly didn't have my homework done. I hadn't talked to other private equity to see what else was being offered out there. I didn't talk to a business banker to truly understand the valuation of this business. So I'm so lucky that it all worked out, but I could really see how things could have gone a lot differently had it been a different buyer.
Yeah, thank you for those three. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So yes. So starting with the exit in mind, in terms of developing yourself as a leader and, really treating the business that you have like a real business, so a lot of the things like we talk about in our academy and what we're teaching is building a business that could be a cash cow for you now, but at any point in time, it's scalable, like we talk about, which means that it doesn't require more of your inputs as a provider to be able to continually grow. And that model that you build, the infrastructure, the systems can be replicatable in different locations, et cetera. So case in point, your team got recruited to another big chain and you were able to get back up on your feet and build something that was worth a lot, right? And so I love that for you and for our listeners. And then you talked about prepping your business. Can you give just like practical sort of a view of the things you talked about, your team players and this sort of like, one word I hear a lot is due diligence, which is like kind of doing the work to prepare documents and really deep dive into what the business is worth. Can you talk about what are a few of those big things that the business needs to have prepared or ready or should be looking at for that?
I never paid attention to my P&L.
Okay.
Never paid attention to it. And a lot of people are probably like, oh my gosh, what a loser. But I'd say the other 90% are probably saying the same thing.
Yeah. I think they're actually probably, there's a lot of head nods.
Maybe
happening.
not 90, but I really didn't, I knew we were doing well, but I did not even know what our bottom line was, what our adjusted EBITDA was. And it took so much work to get there. And there were probably things that are missed. There are so many layers in businesses and money's going in and out, and being able to go back and truly understand having clean finances. It's so important. Everything needs to be traceable. Otherwise, if they can't trace the expense or they can't trace the money, it's not going to be counted, and that will count against you in a sale. So having a good CPA to make sure that your books are really clean. You can have a second corporation and where other expenses can come out of to keep it clean, or you can do the work yourself and make sure that those things are pulled out. Understand what normal expenses are and what normal expenses are not, because that will be a part of your adjusted EBITDA. And that will greatly affect what your exit number is.
Okay. So P&L, clean finances. So yeah. That's, I think
also inventory. It's so important to have that inventory history, that you know exactly what inventory you have, what's been lost, what's missing, what's been given away for free. Knowing what's been pre-sold. Books need to be clean. You need to be able to measure everything. What actual debt does the business have? And that does include pre-sales. Yeah. So all that stuff is really important in a sale process. So
and then you mentioned a team of players. So what kind of team of people should someone have before entering into any kind of a private equity deal or a sale in general?
So you need to understand the value of your business before agreeing to something, right? So a business banker can help with that valuation. M&A attorney, merger and acquisitions attorney, not just any med spa attorney. Ask them, what is your biggest sale? Really, is this what they do for a living? Are you being represented well? And CPA, if you've had the same CPA for who knows how many years, and they're used to running, real small businesses and books, or running, doing the books for real small businesses and books, and they're not used to a decent size sale, you need to really look at that. Make sure you have the right CPA in place to help you with the exit as well, because they can make sure that, that exit process, you're taxed appropriately, right? And that could be part of the negotiations potentially.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So those I think are important team players. Also, your internal leader, you need to have confidence to be able to share with them what's going on. Of course, with reassurance, right? Mm-hmm. That their job is safe and so is everyone else's, and the benefits of this potential process. But you're going to need internal people to support you along the way. And an exit process is like a full-time job on top of your full-time job.
Right. How important is that internal leader to this entire operation?
Unless you can do absolutely everything yourself, extremely important. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of documents that are going to need to be turned over. And if you have someone else running your business, which hopefully you do, they need to be a team player in this process.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, and also an important piece of scaling as well. So yes. Whether it's going to sell or not, right?
Yes, that's right.
Hey, I have a quick announcement, Goddess. I am thrilled to introduce a game changer in the world of female entrepreneurship. Introducing the Alt Experience. This May 17th and 18th in Newport Beach, California, we're setting the stage for something extraordinary. Imagine a gathering where female entrepreneurs share, learn, and connect like never before. The Alt Experience is that rare event where actionable strategies, meaningful connections, and transformational growth come together under one roof. The Alt Experience is all about learning the stories of adversity from thought leaders, sharing this seemingly uncharted and often lonely journey of entrepreneurship. It's the event you've always wished for, designed exclusively for women like you, ready to elevate your business and shatter those glass ceilings. For 2 days, immerse yourself in workshops, mastermind sessions, and talks from industry leaders who are eager to share their journeys and insights. This is where visionary thinking meets actionable advice, all set against the backdrop of the stunning Lido House Hotel in Newport Beach. Spaces are limited, so learn more and snag your spot today at klcconsultants.com/alt. Let's make history together. See you there.
I ask this question to a lot of the women that I talk to that are building their businesses in our space. And, I work with women of businesses of different sizes from $1 million up to 15, 20 million to multiple locations, basically. And I get different answers. And so I'm curious from your perspective, as someone who has sold a business to private equity, do you see these PE roll-ups being a good thing or a bad thing for the aesthetic industry?
It can be different where people will perceive it differently depending on their background and information and goals for their company.
Okay.
In my opinion, it's an overall good thing for our industry. And I have some really important reasons why. Number one, the valuations that we're getting would not exist without private equity. Now, private equity in general, they can be pretty smart. They know where the money is, and they understand that we have a booming, growing industry. And I'm not talking about this year in the soft market. So just, hang in there, people, it'll get better. But what I'm talking about is we are going to continue growing, recession or not. It's going to continue happening, and more people are going to get involved and try treatments and fall in love with it like the rest of us. And so private equity knows that, and the valuations of our business has grown tremendously because of that. So, in the past, we have small business owners trying to buy some of these businesses. They don't have millions and millions of dollars. Right? But private equity does. So now these businesses are scalable. You can have multiple locations and there are buyers for them. Mm-hmm. So we are creating businesses that can be sold just like so many other industries. Without private equity, they wouldn't have the type of money that they have to be able to make these types of purchases. The other part is there's so many people that are going out there and taking an online 1-hour course or a 1-day course, and they can't get a job. So what are they doing? They're opening their own business. And there are no regulations. They go into a salon suite, and I'm not saying all people in salon suites aren't good, because some people need that lower type of investment model, and they can go on and be very successful. But those low commitment models also mean that those people don't have a lot of layers, right? They do something wrong, they can just close shop and be like, oh, darn, let me bankrupt this little corporation if they had one, and be on their way, right? So private equity, they have a lot of layers. There's more layers to protect the patient. Patient goes into these big established businesses, and they're going to be a lot better protected than going into some random place where there's a single provider there and who knows what type of support they're getting. Private equity has big contracts with pharmaceutical companies. They're being offered trainings all the time. They have continued support and so many layers. They're being treated well. They have great insurance. They have great medical benefits. There are so many things that are being offered by private equity that small business owners have a lot harder time to do. It took me years to be able to offer a lot of these things that private equity can do it right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are big benefits for our industry that needs standardization and doesn't have it. So in the meantime, we have a lot of small businesses opening up little places and they don't have regulations. And the medical board and the nursing board can only go visit so many places to be able to see if they're doing right by patients. I mean, we see what's happening with a lot of the counterfeit stuff across the US. That's not going to happen in a big multi-million-dollar backed business, right? And so there's some reassurance for patients. And it's not because they all do right by patients. And because I've seen it before, I go into so many offices and provide trainings. There are certain groups that don't provide enough clinical support to their providers as well, right? But there is a lot of potential clinical support that can be provided in private equity. And some of these businesses do it really well.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point because there's such a low barrier to entry, in the industry. And I was just looking at like some recent numbers that were published, like in 2025. So in another year, our industry aesthetics would be climbing up to 26 billion. And then now with the integration of aesthetics, wellness into aesthetics, which is a $1.5 trillion industry, you get that private equity is chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of the other side of the coin. And I'm curious your thoughts about this is that, the goal of private equity, obviously, if your business is valuable the reason they're knocking on your door is because they see dollar signs, right? I mean, ultimately, there's a lot of people in that process that are making a lot of money. We've talked about the lawyers themselves, right? So like, there's a lot of people that are going to benefit. And obviously, where's all of this going? And I think one of the big concerns with this whole idea of sort of bringing in more standardization and the big pharma contracts and a lot more, let's say, unification among all these different types of med spas is driving more of a uniformity or similarity and ultimately commoditization rather than differentiation and the ability for those providers who are building their own practices to be more artistic or have a more unique brand and things like that there's just more similarities among all of them. So like, what's your thought around that?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to my mind is fear mongering. And the reason is because there's always going to be opportunity for new business owners to open and have their own brand, number one, right? And I can do it if I wanted to. And so the other one is there are big private equity groups right now, and you go into those offices and they are allowed a lot of artistic freedom. Now, there are certain businesses out there that their model is, let's bring in people and train them to do the basics and only allow them to do the basics. Now, what's happening with some of that, I mean, I wouldn't want to be a patient there, but what I can say is by them giving so much structure to these people and so many rules that, yes, those providers don't have the opportunity to be artistic in that practice, but it's a stepping stone for them that hopefully they've been provided enough training to be able to safely provide some basic services. And when they're ready to grow and blossom and move on from there, they can go into other practices and become more artistic or open their own practice or whatever it is that they desire. But that opportunity will always be there and available. And that model is right for some patients. Some patients might want a basic service and they might feel very safe in that type of practice. And there are enough layers in that type of practice. If something goes wrong to that patient, that the patient will be protected. There will be malpractice that covers them. And I don't expect them importing illegal stuff,
Totally.
So yeah, I mean, they may not be able to get their nose done or something, but there is a practice for that type of patient as well.
Yeah.
Right. It just may not be some of these bigger corporate structures.
Right.
Yeah. So I think there's a model for everyone.
Yeah. No, I love that. I hadn't thought of it that way. Is that bottom up approach almost that like, hey, let's protect the industry in the sense that these new providers that are coming in and just trying to hang their shingle up, but haven't done the proper gone through the proper training or had the experience, but that want to get in, go into an environment where there is established proper medical oversight, proper infrastructure, and the financial backing and support to make sure that they're trained and supported properly through that process. Mm-hmm. So, so I'm interested.
I hope that makes sense anyways.
No, well, it did to me. I don't know if I recapped it appropriately, but it made really good sense to me. I love hearing different perspectives because what keeps coming back for me is like, it goes back to having that right partner like you found, right? Like it's what's right for you and where you are. And, everyone's at a different stage in their career and in their business. And, what I really want to warn against and like my, I guess, hesitation around just like fully endorsing like, oh, put your business up for sale today and make a ton of money, is like, it needs to be a lot more well thought through in the sense that I think we as entrepreneurs have such an opportunity to learn how to be great business people. And a lot of the women we work with, once they do, they love that side. Like they love being business builders. And then you get to be the one that's calling the shots, not only building a cash cow business where you're making dividends every single year, but then ultimately where if you'd have sold, at year 4 to private equity and you hold it onto year 10, imagine what that payout would be like for you then, right?
Right.
Yes. To build the business. So I love having the sort of conversations. I'm curious now, and I think it'd be fun to talk to the audience too about like kind of now because I think everyone's just like, now what do you do? Like if you don't, this is what I get up and do every day. So now as exhausted as maybe you even were, like, doing this whole thing, like with your business, right? I know we joke about how exhausting entrepreneurship is and the roller coaster of emotions and all the things, but what would we be without that? So like now, why don't you just talk to us a little bit about what your life is like now and like what you're doing with yourself?
Yes, I'd love to. I haven't figured all of it out. I think being able to retire young is a dream, right? And it's something that I always dreamed of but really didn't expect to have. And I feel so privileged to say that I don't have to work anymore, but I've decided that I want to. Mm-hmm. So I haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to do for the long term. But what I know right now is I'm in love with education. I'm in love with supporting the industry and lifting it up. And I'm here. I'm providing trainings and having fun along the way. I'm still support for my team with Bellevue, and I have full autonomy over my time. I'm about to take a 2-week Disney cruise. Like, I don't know if I could have done that and not felt really stressed out as a solo business owner leaving for 2 weeks out of the country, right? That can be really hard when you've got like 25 people that are back working in the offices, right? Or more or less or whatever. That's stressful. So now I have full autonomy over my time. I can do whatever I want. And I've decided I'm here to stay and can't wait for what the future has in store. I'm open to new opportunities. It's got to be a lot of fun though, because I've got a lot of choices here.
Yeah, right.
I only do what I absolutely enjoy.
And I'm sure you have some sort of a non-compete, right? That you can't just go open up a new business next door yet.
So I can't talk about any potential like conflicts of interest or non-competes with the business, but it is pretty standard to have something like that. And yeah.
So when, I'm curious now that you're doing so many trainings and going into all these different kinds of businesses, and I love following you and watching you on social media and your YouTube and all that now. So what I'm curious if working with so many different practices, now you've sort of have this like bird's eye view, so much about what goes into making a great business. Do you find that there are best practices, as you're going into a business, like, that makes one better than the other? Like, what are things that catch your eye when you go and do a training that like gives you that, like, this is a good business?
Well, the first thing is good branding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good branding is so important. And then a business that shows they put their employees first, and an owner that works on the business more than they work in the business.
Okay. Can you say that one more time?
An owner that works on the business more than they work in the business.
Thank you.
I mean by that is,
thank you. You just did my sales pitch for me.
Oh, is that your sales pitch?
Girl. No, this is my preach. This is like my preach to the world. Like it is like, yes.
Yeah, it's so true. Like if you are inside the business, you can't see everything that's happening outside. You can't see it. You don't know what's happening. You've got an employee back here pissed off for some reason. You've got a patient over here that wasn't greeted appropriately. Now they're mad at you and you're busy injecting patients and you can't deal with it all, right? So if you can pull yourself back, you can look at the big picture, make sure the systems and processes are in place. We're following protocols. We're checking on those and all the good stuff to make sure you've got this healthy, viable business, right? With happy employees, happy patients. That takes a lot of working on the business.
I love that. Yeah. Thanks for that. Do you think that this is like, if I'm listening to this, I'm like, is my business right for a buyout? Like what kind of things are buyers in general looking for? Are these
First of all, like it has to be right for you. And I didn't know it was the right time for me. And after evaluating the situation, I ended up knowing it was right for me. But before the offer, I didn't, right? Which is why I didn't plan it. But have you worked on your business long enough that you feel really good potentially exiting in that moment, right? And so that timing isn't right for everyone. If removing you from the business means you don't have a very profitable or viable business, it's probably not the right time for you. And are you ready to retire? Right? So those questions, those are internal questions that you have to answer. Now, the other thing that I want to say is it's so important to work on this from the beginning because you don't know how your health is going to be from one day to the next. Tomorrow isn't promised to any of us. Just like my diagnosis, I had no idea what was going to happen, but nor did I ever plan for anything happening. I mean, I could have been in an car accident from one day to the next and broken my hands and not be able to treat patients, right? Like we have to be prepared to be able to exit at any time. So is your business a viable business? You want to work on that first. Make sure your business is a viable business with or without you in it. And then you decide when you're not having fun anymore. And I don't mean like the moment you get mad, I'm not having fun, I want out. No.
I'm like, you're going to be getting a lot of calls, let me tell you.
Yeah. Private equity calling around. Are you having fun today? You're not. Sign this contract right now. So make sure it's a good day for you. It's like when you're in a fight with a significant other, don't break up with them in the fight. Like, no, decide later.
I think that was sort of like, what I was intimating a little earlier is just that the caution to think that selling your business is a solution to exhaustion. If you're exhausted, the solution is to build systems and team and support and infrastructure, which then solves both problems, right? It pulls you out of the daily hustle and grind in the business, frees you to become the visionary leader and then create an infrastructure that's worth something then. So it's sort of, I think we feel reactive sometimes because I work with hundreds of women, right? And like, I have met like zero that have said, I started this because I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like no one did.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's hard. It truly is. It's a lot of work. So, so I think like, start thinking about your exit strategy like now, right? Because what's your plan? Building that scalable business model. And then a question I'm curious about, and I know that there's so many variables, but like what kind of a multiple should an aesthetic business negotiate for their business? And maybe for people who don't know what multiple means, you could to help to explain that process.
So, offers can really vary, but one of the most common is a multiple of your EBITDA, which is basically what you generated in revenue after all expenses, and what's pulled out are adjustments and those adjustments are the non-normal expenses. Say you had something unusual that year that you purchased, or something, a vehicle or whatever. A lot of those things can be pulled out. So the EBITDA are your normal reoccurring expenses. Now, legal expenses too, if this is a normal basis, can happen on a normal basis. Those are normal expenses too. But if you had something rare and unusual, that might get adjusted out. So once you get your EBITDA, then, normally when you have a buyer, they give you a multiple of your EBITDA. Now, those multiples can vary. It depends. Like, do you own one practice? Do you own two? Do you own four? Do you own 10? Right? That multiple is higher based on how many practices you have. Also, how much revenue is profit? Is your business healthy? Are all your locations making a certain percentage of revenue, or are you just scraping by? Like, if you're generating a 10% profit, you're not going to get much money. You might not even be able to make a sale. Like, your business needs to be more profitable. So you need to look at your expenses and make sure your overhead isn't too high. And then, are you the main provider? Because your multiple is going to be a lot lower if you're the main provider. You need to be generating less than, and I don't know exactly what the number, I imagine 10 or 20% max of your business to be looked at as a healthy business that can, right, stay in business with or without you. And that's what buyers tend to look at. And so once those things have been established, then there's, a range of what your business can be evaluated. And I've heard numbers from like 2x for a healthy business all the way up to like 13x for many locations. And I think there are ranges all over in between those, but the numbers have gotten higher because of private equity. So as much as people don't like private equity, your business is worth more because they have entered our industry. You're welcome. From their behalf. I need to tip with something.
Spokeswoman, my goodness. Yeah, I love it. So for example, if the adjusted, so basically my EBITDA would be like what I'm making minus what my normal expenses are, my employees, my overhead. If I made a big kind of crazy investment like that year, that's not going to be counted toward like what my year over year, right? My EBITDA is.
Right. So a rare build out might get pulled out, right?
So let's say then my EBITDA was $1 million, just to keep the math simple. Then the multiple would be, if a PE firm came in and said, we'll offer you a 4x multiple, then my buyout would be $4 million. If it was 13, it would be $13 million. Right?
Yeah. The other thing is, I think a lot of private equity are looking for 2 million plus, but I mean, for a better multiple, they'll purchase with a lower multiple, but you won't get, as good of a number.
Yep. So there's a lot of moving pieces in that, but hustle.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't hustle. Get strapped. Yeah.
There you go.
Yes, I know. But
hustle on your business, not in it.
Thank you, Janell. Exactly. Okay, cool. So that, I think my only other questions were just really like preparing the business to sell at an optimal valuation. So some of the things like, and I don't know if you got into this, like, I know you said you hadn't been looking at your P&L. So had you been, that would have been obviously put you in a better spot if you had things clean. Is that correct?
I was in a way better spot and I didn't know it.
Okay, I got you.
And it was a lot of stress and surprises. And so it worked out better than I expected. But I don't know what I didn't miss because my books weren't as clean as they needed to be. And if I would have, I had been trying to familiarize myself with my P&L for months before this happened instead of years. But if I truly understood reading a P&L on a monthly or at least a quarterly basis and understood my profit margin, how to make little adjustments that make these big differences, I could have potentially generated more money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and a few of the other things I took notes on too, we talked about just in terms of like building a great business, your brand, right? And a brand that isn't just you in your face, but a brand for like what the business is all about. So something we teach is a proprietary methodology, something that the business is known for. So every provider, can do it that way, right? Like the recipe book, so to speak. You talked about putting employees first. So why is that important?
Well, without happy employees, you don't have a business.
Oh.
Yeah, so important. And people have choices, right? So if they're not happy, they're going to move on. They need to be paid well. And when I say pay, it's not always money too, right? In terms of compensation, you need to find out like what drives them, what makes them happy. It could mean that certain employees need a certain amount of breaks, or they need a certain amount of time off. And then when they're there, they're just like on fire. So figure it out, what drives them. And hopefully you can work with them a little bit to really help them prosper so they could stay with you long term.
Absolutely. Well, especially hiring people that want to grow with you, right? And grow with the company. And you can show them what that growth path looks like and show them how they can continually be challenged and elevate as people, because we as humans like to know we're going somewhere,
Right. And in alignment with your culture, values, goals of the company.
Yep.
Yeah.
An owner that works on the business, a great leader of the business that's not the owner. Working on your business long enough to put it in a really build the systems and that infrastructure, building a business that you don't have to be in as the owner. So those are some of the things we talked about: clean finances, and just, keeping sort of getting your shit together, basically.
Yeah. Well, we're all getting our shit together for our whole lives, right? Like we're all trying to figure this out. But really getting that business support from the beginning will help catapult your business. I feel like when we're just starting out, we're like, I can't afford this. I can't afford the extra education, the extra workshops, the business support. And we're just in there figuring things out. And without those systems and processes, you're reinventing the wheel all the time. And you're doing what you think might be best, but there are tried and true methods for a reason. And if you can get the support and learn those, then you put your business in a good place right away.
Yeah, I love that. So what, now you're still young.
Well, thank you very much.
The youngest retiree I know. But I'm curious, as you look at your, obviously you and I have talked offline, just, nobody gets to a place of where they built anything they're really proud of without adversities, but I'm curious, looking back, what you're most proud of at this point in your life.
I'm most proud of my kids. Is really, I have a complete identity outside of my business. And I'm just really most proud of my kids that I was able to work so hard and not be as present as I should have been, because I was young and ambitious and didn't give myself enough balance. I could finally have more balance because I have a lot of choices now. But I have 2 grown kids that have made amazing choices in their lives, and they're doing well and they're thriving. And I'm just beyond thankful for that. And then I have 2 little ones. So I'm most proud of them. And aside from that, I am really proud of myself as well. I'm a kid with parents that did not graduate high school. was homeless at 15, actually, and went to 7 different high schools myself. And I spent years running from a life that I knew I didn't want and was trying to figure it out so I could be a better parent and provider for my kids. And I'm just so thankful for the opportunities that have been provided for me, and my goals and dreams and wishes that I kept working on and getting there. And my journey isn't over. I'm still on my journey. And even though things have gone really well, it's not the end of my story yet. But I'm so thankful for where I'm at and my family and my opportunities.
Janell, it's so inspiring. It's like choking me up.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about details because then I'm like,
I know. Well, look, and this is why I called you to come to Alt, and you won't be there because you will be on a Disney cruise.
Yes.
We know this. We'll miss you. But because I think obviously we talked a lot about, the tactics of getting your business, selling your business. And we're in that mode all the time. It's like business owners where it's like, okay, it's almost like showing up in this masculine energy and having to go and get and grab and be in control of things, and not having that control makes us feel anxiety. It feels so counterintuitive. And yet you said there's so much available to everybody. I can't remember your exact words, but you were like, it's just anything is possible.
Life is so abundant. There's so much out there. And all we have to do is dream it, wish it, and attract it, right? And it may not happen in the exact time that we want, but it will happen. If you want it enough, it will come to you. You can vision board, dream, write in your journal at night over and over again. What is it that you want? You will attract that. You don't have to know right now exactly what it is, but you can work towards that and get it. If you want it enough, it's yours.
I love that. And I think the permission to say it's okay if you don't know, but just put one foot in front of the other every day, knowing that you'll get there and you'll get that clarity. No.
Yeah. So, and failure will happen. Failure is not the end. It's just part of the process.
Yeah.
There's no success without failure.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. And I think it's a cliche, but for a reason. And people who have failed and felt the pain of that, who have recovered, know that, because I think when you talk about your source of pride, and you should brag on your children because they're pretty badass. But they are because of you and what you've done and that mindset, as well too. And it's not because of what you achieved or what the millions you were paid out, or whatever. I'm assuming, it was millions. I don't know that number. But it's because of the journey that you went on and what you overcame to get to that point, and then here you just get this whole, so we'll have to catch up with you in a 5 years or something and see what this new,
what I'm doing next.
I'm feeling you're going to be like a private equity spokesperson, a spokesmodel. I'm kidding.
Who knows what the future has in store?
Yeah.
I'm halfway there. Halfway there.
Well, it's been such a joy chatting with you. Is there any other sort of advice or things maybe I should have or didn't ask you that you think you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a privilege to be here and to be invited onto your podcast. I really appreciate it. And I feel like you covered everything that I could think of in this moment. But if you run into any more questions, we'll just have to do a part 2.
Yes, let's plan on that. So we'll be opening up this conversation at Alt with all the women there. We're going to be talking a lot about just building a business that is really prime to be able to sell at its highest valuation, and whether you want to sell or keep it, and at whatever point you're ready is up to you. But I think you and I both agree, Janell, that the process is pretty similar, right? Is building a business that can scale without you. So as questions come up, I may ping you back from your cruise to kind of chat on that. So where can the listeners follow you and your journey along the process?
So you can find me on Instagram. It's just my name, Janell Ocampo. And you can also find me on YouTube. I have a few educational videos that I've recently posted. Some that I'm proud of and some that I'm not so proud of. I'm learning. This is my new life. I'm being reborn. And I'm having a lot of fun. So
reborn as a YouTuber, and you're doing such a good job. I mean, some people are just scared. It's scary making videos, and it's a lot of work. It
is. I've decided that, speaking in front of a camera makes me uncomfortable. So I need to do a lot more of it. And so I'm not saying no.
Right through it, right?
Getting more and more comfortable.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Janell. I appreciate all of your insight. It has been such a pleasure.
Likewise.
Okay.
Take care. Bye.
Listen, leader, if you're vibing with me here, hang tight, because I have a brand new resource for you. You are a successful, confident, powerful woman who just isn't into being average. No, you have a calling, and part of that calling is requiring you to level up. And I know that if you're working across the next $1 million milestone in your business, you need to be in the right circles. And perhaps that's why you found us. I'd love to invite you to join The Blueprint, a weekly resource for inspired, provocative thinkers who are taking this conversation to the next level. Get access to free business tools, podcast supplements, guideposts, and direct communication with me and my expert team. And of course, a masterfully curated circle of women making big moves and disrupting the status quo in aesthetics and wellness. You can link directly through the show notes or head to klcconsultants.com/blueprint. It's time to elevate. See you there, goddess.